originally started to fill a policy gap in the state of Mississippi. We were founded right after Hurricane Katrina, and that was a disastrous time for families along the Mississippi Gulf Coast, South Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. And our founder at the time saw these huge needs in poor communities and communities of color, and realized that one of the reasons why there was such a huge gap in services is because of the lack of a policy and leadership infrastructure in some of these communities. So One Voice was started to fill that gap. You know, there are so many programs that are beneficial in different ways. For instance, our criminal justice reform program is working with folks who have felony convictions and criminal convictions to try to rebuild their lives and to try to shape policies that change this system. So that work is special to me. Our electric cooperative work works with folks in rural communities, and this program probably gets us the closest to rural communities on basic community organizing skills on how to change their energy company and how to build power within their own energy company. So that program is very special. Our leadership development program has created this network of hundreds and hundreds of leaders from across the state that are doing dynamic things and replenishing that pool of leadership in different pockets of the state. So that work is very special. When One Voice's work is done, we will have strong, vibrant neighborhoods. We will have successful schools. We will have a strong economy here in Mississippi. We will have a criminal justice system that has been totally dismantled and looks a lot different. But most importantly, we'll have strong, healthy, successful families. Good afternoon, Mississippi. I am beyond excited to welcome you to our annual gathering of leaders, the Mississippi Black Leadership Summit. As we approach a historic election day on Tuesday, we know that there is no rest for the weary. It is imperative that we continue to work together to overcome the obstacles that have been placed before us. We are on the eve of a new Mississippi where we don't have to be embarrassed by the ongoing remnants of slavery and Jim Crow, a new Mississippi with good jobs, good homes, and good schools for everyone, and a new Mississippi that we can all be proud of. When Derek Johnson developed the vision for this summit over 10 years ago, he knew that a new Mississippi was possible. And when groups like the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus, the Mississippi Black Caucus of Locally Elected Officials, the Mississippi Association of Black Mayors, and the Minority Caucus of Supervisors began to come together, we started witnessing this strengthening of the Black infrastructure in Mississippi. And I am so proud to continue this work, especially with the support of the two outstanding gentlemen that are joining us this morning. Congressman Bennie Thompson, representing the 2nd Congressional District, and also a proud Tougaloo College alumni, has been a champion for civil rights, education equity, and healthcare in Mississippi throughout his entire career. He has been the brainchild for several initiatives in Mississippi, and we are so proud to have started a Black Leadership Institute along with the Congressman in order to continue the strengthening of Black leadership in Mississippi. And I'm so proud to call him a mentor. The next young man is also a mentor of mine, even though he's also like a little brother to me. So at the same time, Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba became Jackson's 53rd mayor in July of 2017. He was 34 years old at the time, making him the youngest mayor in Jackson's history. He is an attorney, a husband, a father, and the son of two lifelong community activists, late Mayor Chokwe Lumumba and Nubia Lumumba. And we're so proud to have him as our mayor and as one of our speakers this morning. And so now I'm going to turn it over to these gentlemen for an important conversation about leading in time of crisis.
Well, just as an introduction, leadership's real important. There's never been a time in this country where leadership has not been at the forefront of what we're dealing with. So the notion that you hear that leaders are born, not made, there's some resonance to that, but basically part of what it is most of us are the sum total of our experiences. And if you have the right kind of experiences along the way, it should help shape and mold you into who you are. So it could be your school, it could be your community, it could be your church, it could be your friends, whomever. All those experiences are real important. And I found my favorite T-shirt for this event that says, "I have every right to be here, Black man in America." So that has significance because we came here under duress. We have survived under duress, but we're in a country that purports to have freedom, justice, and equality for all. That's elusive. And so leadership on both sides, white and Black, is where we get to where we need to be. And the notion is, how do we empower ourselves? Leadership is important. The question is, how do we make sure that the next crop of leaders know what's going on? And so I'm happy to be here. I want to have that talk. But leadership in the Black community is struggling. A lot of it is economic. A lot of it has to do with the policies of a repressive administration. But nonetheless, as a people, we survive. We survived slavery. And so this too shall pass in terms of the moment we're in now. But through it all, we have to keep the collective together and work through it. And we have to talk to each other rather than at each other, about each other. So I look forward to the discussion. And Naomi, thank you so much for your leadership with One Voice and making this happen.
Well, good afternoon. And it is also my pleasure to join this discussion. I'm grateful for the Mississippi Black Leadership Summit. Grateful to be joining this conversation with somebody that I look up to, that I think has been a mentor to so many people, and that's Congressman Thompson. I'm grateful to join my friends Nashambi and Yumika as well. I think that what we know is that we are in a critical hour. Like Congressman Thompson said in his remarks, not as if we have not seen critical hours in our past. But I think that this moment truly highlights the underlying conditions of our nation. I think much of what we will discuss tonight really hinge on the fact that our communities lack the self-determination they so justly deserve. It hinges on the fact that people don't see the dignity in their lives that they deserve. Far too often we see communities like ours suffering from cycles of humiliation, where we see poor performing schools, where we see high poverty, where we see issues of health care, where we see high crime. And so it is imperative that we fight for the dignity and respect that every person truly deserves. And that's what leadership is ultimately about. It's about making certain that you carry forth the charge of the people. The words of Sister Ella Baker said that when you look deep into community, you find strength, not weakness. And so it is important that as we grow the solutions to these problems, that we truly empower community to be a part of those solutions. When we look at what COVID-19 has brought to us in 2020, COVID has not come here to discriminate against anyone. What COVID has done is shine a light on where we are already missing the mark. Many of the reasons why so many of us take such offense to a president who says that he wants to make America great again. When it comes to the treatment of our people in this in this country, when it comes to our economic conditions, when it comes to the opportunities that we fail to have laid out before us, when it comes to the environment in which we live in many cities across this nation, America hasn't gone wrong. America has never been right. And so my first concept of love that I learned from my mother. And my mother loved me enough that she endeavored to correct where I was not doing as I should. And so if our notion of love is consistent with that, then, just as President Obama said, that there is no greater form of patriotism than the notion that America is not.
First of all, I have a 15-year-old grandson who is, for all intensive purposes, being virtually educated at home. I'm fortunate to be in Bolton, Mississippi, where we do have connectivity. Hinds County Schools recently passed a bond issue that allowed tablets to be available to all students. And so some of the facility impediments that the majority of students in the district, second congressional district that I represent, they still have those impediments. They don't have connectivity. They don't have the resources to buy the necessary tablets or other laptops or whatever they're using. We provided money to school districts through the state of Mississippi under the CARES Act for that to happen. But part of what happened is everybody all over the country started ordering equipment at the same time. So even though districts had the money, they were told, we can't get it to you for 3 months or 4 months. But that highlights a broader issue is, in this age of technology, how in the world can our young people not have access to the most current methods of learning, even in this, if the coronavirus wasn't here. Now that it's here, we have to play catch up, and it's a struggle. And I know you're struggling because your district is the second largest district in the state of Mississippi. And even with that, there are issues in parts of the city of Jackson where you struggle to make sure that connectivity exists even in the capital city. So what we've done at the federal level, if the HEROES Act is passed, there's enough money in the HEROES Act to build out the infrastructure all over this country so that connectivity for any man, woman, or child will not be an issue ever again. So I hope when we go back after the election next week, we have the leadership to get that package passed so we can get on with the business of building a future around public education in this country.
No, I was just thanking you for your work to try to get the HEROES Act passed and let you know that we're championing that. We're rallying behind you on the local level. And I think, your words, really point out the fact that in the midst of this pandemic, it is really being exposed how the infrastructure of our schools, how the lack of resources, that our schools have been able to acquire over so many years are not only failing us now, but have historically failed us. I am a JPS product, a proud JPS product. But I remember when I was in school, I remember only having a class set of books, which literally meant that the work that we were doing within our books, we could only do when we were at school, and then we had to go home. And so, there arises the question of how does a child do homework without the tools at a time where internet wasn't as prevalent? How do they take advantage of what they need to take advantage of when they're competing, not only within their district, but across the state, and we're trying to measure them up. And so, it is important that we support initiatives like this, and it's important that we're honest with our parents and honest with our children that we have a long way to go, or we have some great work to do to make certain that they have access to this. We're happy that we've been endeavoring, or we're proud to be endeavoring to do that at the city level. One of the resources we have is dark fiber that was laid in the ground at the time that Katrina took place. And so we're trying to take advantage of that so that we can provide access to internet in areas where people don't have that access, and provide it and act as a provider as a city. So we've gotten our own autonomous systems number, where we're not just trying to be a mere purchaser of internet, but a distributor. And we see that as a necessary resource that we have to be able to provide our community. So I thank you for your work. And I think that it's important that we partner. It's important that the community get engaged and are aware of these steps so that we can make certain that our children don't find themselves falling further and further behind.
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. And that kind of, and I think you and I, as graduates of public school systems, appreciate the fact that without a strong public school system, this country as a whole would fail. And so taking off from that, we can talk about what we had to do in the midst of this coronavirus under those CARES 1, CARES 2 packages. We provided monies for what we thought in CARES 1 was all the businesses in America, black, white, brown, yellow, but just because we are in America and left to its own devices, institutions will gravitate to people who go to church with them, who live in that neighborhood, who they play golf with. And so what Congress saw in the first round was a disproportionate distribution of the wealth, so that small and or minority businesses did not get the PPP loans like others did. Butler Snow Law Firm in Jackson got a $10 million loan right out the chute. You know what I'm saying? Got a big, pretty building on Interstate 55. But I was having people calling me saying, look, I have a lawn care service. I have 5 people who work for me, and all I need is $20,000 to keep these people employed.
Yeah.
Well, they couldn't get the 20,000, but the Butler Snows of the world got 10 million. And I'm not divulging any secrets, because you can go online and see who got all the money, because it's public money. But what I'm saying is the system left to its own devices will not help small and minority businesses. So what we did on the second go round, we fixed it, and we said a certain percent of this money has to go to small and minority businesses. And you can't believe how many of those institutions, lending institutions, said we wasn't being fair. Now, mind you, first round, they got all the money. Second round, we just said, well, 10% gonna have to go to small minority women-owned businesses. Only 10%. And Nancy Pelosi and a lot of other folk got called everything but a child of God because we recognized what happened the first go and we fixed it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to say that the leading institution in this area that helped us was Hope Credit Union. Hope Credit Union did a phenomenal job. They helped colleges and they helped houses of worship. And some of them who haven't been open since March, but they were able to get the necessary loans to keep going. Some of them had kindergartens, some of them had adult daycare centers, some of them had tutorial programs, whatever. So in other words, even when we pass things here, it's a struggle. And I know as mayor, you have to fight that demon every day on behalf of people of color. You're not asking for preferential treatment, but you just don't want to be ignored, you know?
Absolutely.
And let me kind of see where you are.
No, I agree with you completely, Congressman. I think that what we saw out of how certain majority businesses took advantage and well-established businesses took advantage of those resources is a reflection of how one-sided the economy can be each and every day. We hear of an administration presently that boasts of this the best economy in the country's history, which is a misnomer on many accounts, but most especially when you know that while the pie may be getting larger, for far too many of us, our slice of it isn't. And so, we're seeing this with the businesses that are taking advantage of it, and the businesses that don't have the relationships that you're speaking of with the banks, with the lending institutions, that don't have the regular capital that they need to sustain themselves through periods of slow business like we're dealing with during COVID. I am grateful to institutions like Hope Community Credit Union. The city was happy to partner with them. In fact, we had our small business development center with the city step in with Hope and partner with Hope so that we could coach our businesses through many of the requirements to fulfill the applications so that Hope was then able to just simply, focus on the processing of those applications. And that's where it is necessary that we stand in the gap in that way. And because we were able to do that, we were able to see $4.5 million of loans go to those businesses. Now, the reality is that still is far and away not enough. It still is not representative of the type of capital and the type of resources that our businesses need, not only throughout the city of Jackson, but statewide and nationwide. And so, I think that it is important that we do take a stand when we know that there are businesses that are disadvantaged, businesses that don't have the access to capital and the resources that they need to compete in the larger markets. And so, just as I tell people that I support Black business, and that's not an issue of race, that's an issue of economics. I say if 85% of your population is left-handed, then you need some left-handed jobs. Jackson is an 85% Black city, and so I will not apologize, and nor should we ever apologize for those businesses being supported, especially when we see an economy which is run by the top 1%. 1% of our population dominates our economy and leaves everyone else to pick up the pieces and find out where they fit in as they may.
Well, Mayor, that leads us to another issue, which is like around healthcare. President Obama had the Affordable Care Act. We passed that act. I was the only member of our delegation who voted for it. And thank goodness we had enough numbers on the other side to get it done. And so what that did was afforded 20 million people in this country to get health care who had never had it before. With that, if you were in a family, you could keep your insurance until you were 26 years of age. If you were in a family, pre-existing conditions, diabetes, hypertension, whatever, would not prevent you from getting it, nor getting insurance, nor would it allow you to have to pay a higher premium. In addition to that, your benefits were not capped. So if you had a major illness, it didn't matter whether it cost $50,000 or $100,000 or $2 million, you had to be covered, because we told insurance companies, you have to, part of your actuarial responsibility is assume the risk. And if you do it wrong, that's your problem. But you can't penalize the customer. And so we fixed it. No insurance companies went out of business. You know, they still making money, but they're not buying islands in the Caribbean with their excess profit. You know, we required them to put their profits back in the company, and we limited the percent of the profits. Now, I'm trying to get to where we are now. This administration wants to take the pre-existing condition back. Now, what does that say for our state? I have 26 counties. All or some of those 26 counties I represent are medically underserved. Even in Hinds County, we have census tracts that represent the medically underserved. That's the capital city, or Hinds County, the capital county. So even though we have major health facilities here, we still don't have enough to match the population to be served. So you can go into 4 of my counties, and we don't even have a hospital in those counties. So we said, okay, Medicaid expansion. States, if you want money, you ought from us, in addition to what we already offering, all you have to do is agree to take this money, and then you can spend it on any care for the elderly or the poor that you write. So in other words, we're gonna give you the money and you can do it. Mississippi not only turned it down, but now they missed out on about $14 billion, not million, $14 billion that would come to this state, no strings attached, which means that the 5 hospitals that we had to go out of business, the 5 or 6 that we've had to go bankrupt and scale back services might not have had to do that. Yeah. But I can't get the health professionals to take a positive step on it. The Medical Association won't come out in support of Medicaid expansion. Hospital Association won't come out in favor of health Medicaid expansion because it will help poor and minorities. And so we still fight that struggle every day. And I know you struggle with it every day there in Jackson.
Well, when you speak of the healthcare professionals that won't take a stand on it, I'm thinking about the calls that I received from healthcare professionals when elective procedures were being put on pause because of the need for hospital space, a decision that was not even mine. But, just the irony of, people feeling as if they were being discriminated against because they weren't able to pursue the full extent, the full breadth of the medical treatment that they want to provide for their financial purposes, but at the same time lacking the sensitivity of people who have access to those to health care because they're under-resourced, because they don't have health care. And so, I was earlier today, we were rededicating the monument that we have on Freedom Corner to Martin Luther King and Medgar Evers. And so that brings into the forefront this fight that they had years ago towards the right to vote. And so it's my position that if the right to vote was the battle of the 20th century, then the right to have access to health care for everyone is the battle of the 21st century. When we look at COVID and we look at, this discussion about people with underlying conditions being, disproportionately, vulnerable to this virus, we don't understand how people find themselves in that position. People find themselves in that position because they don't have the health care to go to routine doctor's visits so that they can get the instruction, they can get the advice, they can get the medication that helps better control their health for themselves so that they will not be disproportionately affected. It isn't that coronavirus likes Black and brown people. It's that the coronavirus takes advantage of what already exists there. And what has exists there is our communities that have been underserved. Whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking about healthcare, whether we're talking about an economy, when you overlay the census tract data of where communities are being disproportionately affected time and time and time again, it's going to bring us back to the same communities. And so I'm grateful for the position that you took early on the healthcare package under the Obama administration. And I think we have to go one further. Even as a city, we're trying to model what we believe we must see. Just in our last budget discussions and the budget we passed, and as you know, a budget is a moral document. It's supposed to reflect what the values of the people are. And so we elected to pay 100% of the health insurance premiums of our city employees. That's a measure not only recognizing the human dignity and the need for those individuals to be able to take care of themselves, but what we need the business community to realize is that your ability to take care of your workforce results in better productivity. It results in better business being done. If we can shorten the time that people are sick and ill, then that means that we benefit as they benefit in the final analysis. So I know that there has been a lot going on, Congressman, in 2020. I was thinking about an executive order just to call this the year formerly known as 2020. Because it's given us, everything that we can think of. But, in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of social activism that has been taking place around the country, it has led and organized an effort to see things that have been long overdue. Namely, when we look at the state of Mississippi and the removal of the state flag, I think that the social movements for change that have been taking place and sparking not only nationwide, but particularly here in Mississippi, have led to that effort having taken place. And so, I just want to get your perspective on what that means to you. What is the significance of the Confederate battle insignia being removed from the state flag at this time?
Well, thank you. The one thing I can say, Mayor, it's the beginning. By no means is it the end, because all those societal illnesses we've been talking about will still exist if and when the flag is changed. So what we have to do is, just like the flag became an economic issue, when you saw the banks, the chambers of commerce, the Mississippi Economic Commission, all the Hospitality Association, all those all of a sudden jump right up and say, oh yeah, we got to change this flag. But it was because outside forces had said, Mississippi, if you don't change that flag, we're not coming to play football. We're not coming to play basketball. We're going to cancel concerts. And they said, oh, I get that. Mm-hmm. So that's what you mean. So you're not talking about me giving up my heritage and all that. I understand the economics of it. So now all of a sudden, the economics have come into play. And so in all probability, the flag issue on the ballot will pass. But I want to know what's the next issue after the flag.
Absolutely.
Are we going to just say, oh, man, we finally changed the flag. We don't have anything to worry about. It fixes education. It fixes healthcare. It fixes transportation and infrastructure. That's not true. Yeah. So we still have work to do. I would love to see those coalitions that came together to get us to this point on the flag, to stay together and talk about those issues that heretofore have divided us. And until we can talk about those cultural and activist issues that have divided us, the one thing that I saw in Jackson and all around the country was when I saw young white boys and girls carrying Black Lives Matter sign. I said, oh my goodness. Yeah. You know, this is that civil rights movement 2.0 taking place right here. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, absolutely. And you know, I want to speak about, you know, kind of this moment where young people are coming together and how we concretize that, you know, how we take it from this mystical, mysterious place and organize it in a way that builds on the legacy and the history of the work that has happened, you know, over time from so many people. You know, when I think of the flag, you know, I always take a moment really to thank the people who have been on the front lines for that fight long before the pressure mounted so high that people who weren't taking that stand decided to do so. So I think of people like Aaron Henry. I think of people like Henry Kirksey and their hard work. And I thank you. You know, the times that I've had an opportunity to come and visit you in your office, you go down a long corridor where every single, you know, congressperson, you know, has their state flag right there. And so, you know, when you get to Congressman Bennie Thompson's office, you have Tougaloo College flag there, right? That's the flag that is there. Right. And that's important because it's a symbol of what represents us and what speaks to our lives. But I think your point of it being more than just a symbolic change, that we must have, you know, a substantive change that ensues. And so when I see young people coming together, you know, it just reminds me of a notion that occurred to me some while ago. You know, I was having a conversation with one of my father's friends, and you knew my parents. You knew that they were both deeply involved in activism. And so I was having a conversation about all these great organizers over time, you know, the Medgar Evers and the Martin Luther Kings and the Marcus Garveys, you know, and it occurred to me that the greatest organizer of all time is oppression, because it is oppression. It is the conditions that people are suffering from that can really highlight the need for change. And so, you know, I think of the words of Dr. Franz Fanon when he said that each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. And so when I see, you know, the leadership initiative that you have, Congressman, that is trying to build young leaders, which is trying to educate young leaders, that's necessary because we cannot discourage that energy. Now, you know, we need to, it will take its own form. You know, you're older than me. But I'm older than a lot of the young people who are organizing these efforts. I will not purport to you that I understand, you know, every method of organizing that they take on. But I do want to encourage it. I do realize that it is the young people, it is, you know, the grandchildren of many of the people who have been set in our ways for so long that ultimately will lead to the change that we need to see. And we need programmatic solutions. We were talking about education earlier in our discussion. You know, I forgot to shout out One Voice because the conversation that we're having about the lack of resources, you know, harkens back to Initiative 42, where we were trying to fight for, you know, adequate education for all of our young people in the state of Mississippi. And so we have to remember those struggles and really propose programmatic solutions to how we're going to do this. And since we're talking about programmatic solutions, we know that we're on the eve, and I think the undertone of much of which we have been discussing today points to this. We know the importance of voting. I think that every election cycle we talk about it possibly being the most important election of our time. For me, I cannot really express enough how it really feels absolutely true and critical at this hour. And I think that, my position is we know who Donald Trump is, right? We don't need the 1000th confirmation of who he is, the bigotry he espouses. The real question is, who are we and what are we going to stand up for? And so I just, really want you to talk about what you see at this time, with the election, being on the eve of the elections.
Well, thank you, Mayor. One of the challenges we have in the greatest democracy that the world has ever known is how do we keep it? And you keep it by participation. If you don't participate, then the Donald Trumps of the world will evolve. And ultimately, you go in another direction. But the beauty of this democracy is that the billionaire and the homeless person, their vote counts the same. So on November 3rd, this election day, everybody can be equal that one time by casting a vote. And so in America, we settle our differences for the most part at the ballot box. Win, lose, or draw. After that election, the winners celebrate. The losers, for the most part, lick their wounds, but they also looking behind saying, I'm going to get you next time. The unfortunate thing about this election, though, is our president is stoking the flames of racism, domestic terrorism, and basically encouraging a group of folk out there that if this thing doesn't go right, then we're going to have to take armed insurrection against it. Because if it was right, I would be reelected. And so that's the backdrop. That's what's at risk in this democracy right now, is that people who see themselves losing want to take up violence as a remedy for that loss. And that harkens back to the Ku Klux Klan, the church burnings, and the cross.